You want to start the intro?
Huh?
You want to start the intro?
Go ahead.
Hello, Blake Brennan here.
And Steve Townsend.
And we're doing videos on a series for fun and hopefully educational or helps out some people out there about advice, so to speak, for new and aspiring whip makers. And we're just pulling out topics and that we think are good to have talked about or gone over, or something you'll eventually come across. And maybe some of these things are things you just should look off early off. And the topic we're going to talk about is whip pictures, basically. I mean, that can cover a lot of things, from doing good pictures to what you want to see out of a pick, or, you know, even the other side of the spectrum is some people that have used pictures that aren't theirs to advertise, you know. So we're going to kind of cover the spectrum. But first off, is that just buffering, or is that music, is it out?
No, it's just buffering.
Skip a song. Maybe it just does not like the Stones.
No, I don't know.
Skip that one. I don't hear that one. It's good. I'm all right. That works. Maybe it'll work. We'll see. Anyways, so whip picks. There's a lot of topics. We're just kidding. No good music today. All right. You want to start?
I don't know. You know, we were talking earlier, and there's the way I see it, at least, there's a couple different types of pictures you can take of whips. You know, if you're wanting to sell a particular whip, the photos that you would take of that whip might be different than if you're taking pictures to, so to speak, dress up or just have somewhere on pages on a website or something. So, like, if you've got, you know, like on, I have my website, I got a logo that's got a country western theme, and obviously whips are somewhat country western. So, also, I'll have some photos of whips. Like, I've got a black 10-foot bullwhip on a saddle, and I always thought that was a nice picture. But to me, that just kind of, it's not really a good pic to demonstrate the coil of that whip or the taper of that whip. So it's not a very good pic if I'm trying to sell that whip or post that whip as an advertisement for sale. But it's good to have, in my mind at least, pictures like that on my website that kind of further give more visualizations and imagery of the Old West and stuff, which is, you know, just kind of one aspect of the whip making thing that I personally like. But,
yeah, he's talking about giving a picture on your site a little more pop as opposed to whatever. You know, I think it was an earlier video. You know, we had a couple of these recording, went dead, and we just had a, you know, we just got a little sort of, I think I was talking about, like, some guy, you know, if he had a chest theme, you know, it's like, you know, he that would help his website out. Like, even if he had just like a white background that shows whips normally on the site, man, he could have all these great different colored chessboards and different colors that could match whips. Just put the whip on there that contrasted well. And I mean, that would at least be a solid background. And if you had something like that as your background, that because your brand was chess and whips, you know, not only would it be a nice background, like change colors with it, it'd look good on your site. You know, now I may not want to sew whip like that because maybe the lighting or the way things work, you can't really see the coil. But, you know, it would showcase your brand off in a nice way, you know. So there's definitely some things if you want, you don't have to, but you can do to make your picks reflect your brand or image, or make, you know, more for the site to sell it. But you know, you mentioned, you know, one thing we were talking about was before once is being able to see the coil of the whip. Like, if you really want to be able to see how good a whip is on a picture, and you got to realize a lot of customers that are buying Kangaroo from us, or, you know, depending on how long they get it, they're looking at $700 a whip. Or if you're even buying an in stock, they're getting a discount. You want to see what, you know, whatever it is, you know, you're spending several $100s. So you kind of want to put a picture, like, say, here's the outline of the whip, here's the handle, and here's the coil. You know, you want to have it laid flat on the ground so you can actually see the coil as is. Now, if the coil was touching it all, almost like a rope tied, it would be so close to each other you really can't see the taper through the pick. So you definitely want a good picture spot on down, where you can actually have things separated in the coil so you can actually see the taper. You know, customers that spend a lot of money, they may not know how to look at a whip like a whip maker, but that does allow them to help see things that are, you know, things they can notice. Be like, so-and-so's whips, I can see it's aloft. And pictures can make or break your product, and it goes twofold. A good picture can make a bad whip look good, and a bad picture can make actually a pristine whip look crappy. I mean, there's a lot to consider besides just background, like lighting, things like that, angle, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was always turned off by some of the pictures I see that where the whip's wrapped up and tied together, and so it's almost like bundled up as it would be on your belt, and you can kind of see the color of the whip and the style of the whip, but from a customer's point
Yeah,
of
the
view,
handle's clear. You can see the handle mostly, but
you can't see the coil of the whip. And another thing that brings up in a customer's mind might be, well, is there something on this? Is there a misbraid or something that they don't want me to see? Whether there is or not, it might just make it a concern. So if you've got your whip laid out on the ground all nice and neat, and a bit of a gap between each layer of
coil,
yeah, so to speak, then it just makes it easier for them to see everything. And then you can have close-ups or whatever, different angles of the whole thing obviously don't hurt, but you at least want to have a shot or two of the whip laid out to where
you could, with your eye, you'd be able to see the taper of it. And people that know what they're doing well enough can, by the taper whip, generally tell how it's going to roll out. And I can also tell by some whips exactly how the construction was just by looking at the taper. But that's more of a really trained whip maker's point of view than the average guy. Not that it's really that here or there. Right. I originally, when I first started taking pics, one thing I did was I had them coiled, like I had a tree and I had the limb cut off, so I would hold them on this tree and the handle would rest. And I went after those pics because when looking around everyone else's, one thing that was kind of you didn't see a lot of is a lot of natural shots, really good outside picture shots. A lot of shadow boxes, a lot of little things dropped on things. Some people had them, they'd hang them on a fence post or things like that. There's a lot of different people done different things, lean them up against stuff. But I thought that worked really good. But the problem is, like you said, the coil was up there, and I had it set up so you can kind of see the coil. But as much as you can see the coil in the lower layers here and there, you still can't see on the top where it sits. So, they look good overall on my site. And but eventually I was like, well, I need to see the coil more. So I think that was important. One of the best advice I had was let your work speak for yourself. So take good pictures that show your work, and let it speak for yourself. So I started using just my wooden deck, and then I started using concrete. And the reason I also started going this route, and I had other things. Before that I would have tree trunk or just sections of tree trunk sitting there, and it was cut flat, and I would lay it on there. I started trying to find things to lay it on, or rocks, big rocks that could see it, but I didn't want to put it in the grass where the grass covers it, because it's like bad shadows in a picture. If you're trying to see the coil, it can ruin it. But whatever you can do to lay it down was good. Now I've seen a lot more people do starting to reflect that, and like I have my own angles that I thought were great angles, and then if you start looking, when I look at other people's, I'm like, wow, their angles aren't as good as they could be to really accentuate it. But even the angle can affect things. And what I liked outside was natural lighting. People make a shadow box, and the problem a lot of times with shadow box is, even though it's supposed to eliminate light or shadow, it can still happen. A bad pick at the wrong angle still gives you shadow. And so they're great to use, but I couldn't do it. And I found out what works best is natural lighting. So I love a shadowy area. Like I have enough of a house that shades a part of my concrete or deck. So I love in the brightness of day to be in a shaded spot, because that in a sense will get rid of shadow. And because it's natural lighting, your camera will pick it up really good. Or on an overcast day where the sun's behind the clouds, perfect for lighting. Perfect time for lighting, because it's natural lighting and won't give you shadow. That sounds crazy because you're in shade room, but there's no shade. So like one of my whips went to props was Captain Jack Sparrow themed snake whip, and it was on there for months. I thought I expected it to sell fast, but I'm just like, oh man, I'm surprised it hasn't sold. So I go to look at their pictures. It's on a white background, and the angle of the pic made it look like the last part of the taper was kind of like weird or fast taper, or it looked really odd. And then I was looking at the pic, I'm like, what the heck happened? Because I know that whip, it wasn't like that. But it wasn't a normal flat down angle. It was a weird side askew angle, and it just happened to be that the shadows gave it that illusion. So when you do it in normal sunlight, where there's still shadows because you're under the sun, it can sometimes make the taper look better, or worse when it's not. It's crazy how more like movies. What color is the Indiana Jones whip? Lighting does a lot. It's the same whip, 5 different shades from 5 different lightings. Right. It helps to kind of play.
Yeah, I think the thing with having being out in the daylight but in a shaded area is now you've got reflected light only, but it's reflected from almost every direction around you. So like you said, it'll get rid of a lot of the shadow just because the light's bouncing off of you, your garage door, the driveway over there, everything around you is reflecting that light from every direction. So it does help eliminate a lot of the bad shadows. But definitely better than bright sunlight. And then there again, depending on what you're doing, bright sunlight might be what you want. If you're not really trying to show this particular whip, you're just trying to set up a photo of a whip that you're wanting to put on your website to use as a backdrop or something, So sunlight might be good for that, but I think if you're trying to take a really good picture that shows the detail and coil of a
shadow
whip,
play, even in full sunlight, directly overhead, hot of the summer, the shadows play it. You cannot eliminate the shadows, even if you get a straight down pan. There's some shadows still underneath that where it just plays a little optical.
Right, and at that point, you probably have to shadow your camera.
Yeah, things like that. Also, we think about this, like handles, like when you have a handle braid, you want the handle braid should hopefully be straight as the spine on a whip. But sometimes when you have a yoke and you start braiding on it, and you get it started so you can pull everything through. Well, sometimes just because you braided a little bit and pulled it through, and it's locked into place, it just causes the seam to veer a little bit, even though it doesn't look like that, it doesn't actually look. How to explain this? It doesn't here's the heel and here's the thong. It doesn't actually look as opposed to straight and then curve. It actually now looks curved from the heel and then it straightens down the center. And sometimes you'll see it on a lot of people that do it. It might happen like that. It's not a big deal. But if you took a picture of it right, I found out one time when I saw that, I took a picture of it and I'm like, oh, I know that little curve was there. I'm working on it. And when I took a picture of it, that curve was gone. And I shake my head when I look and I'm going to go back to the whip. I'm like, what? I'm like, how's it there? And just the angle, like if you're down on a handle, if the handle's even curved a little, sometimes that angle will just make it look straight and it's not. And then I've had other handles that were straight as can be. Like I'll spin it around, on it. And then my angle made it look like it had just a little quarter twist, but it didn't. So, there's optical like that. The diamonds, you come to the right point, you haven't changed the handle, it looks like perfect diamonds. And then you angle it right, and it looks more like, what you call it, convex, or is that concave? Either way, they like a flat, and they look more flattened out. It just, angle of camera is huge on a lot of stuff too. So,
right. And from the buyer's point of view, the buyer needs to beware because a picture doesn't always let you know. You can take a good picture of a bad whip and make it look really good, but you don't, until you get it in your hands, know what you're going to get. That's one thing I've learned is, that goes back to one of the other videos we made when I actually got to see David Morgan's and Joe Strain's. It's a lot different than seeing them in a picture.
You're going to actually feel the density on this one versus that one or whatever.
But when it comes to taking the photos, you definitely want to try to take the best photo that's going to give the best representation of what that whip really is in my mind. You want the customer to see everything.
The main angles, the main things you want to see on it in the right angles to help show it well.
Yeah, and a good lighting. So try not to cover up your coils or anything like that. Have it wound up and tied together on itself, unless, like I said, you're doing an action shot or it's hanging on a belt for a indie style shoot, just highlight a Raiders whip or whatever.
And then on the flip side, as far as this really doesn't go with you taking better pictures or finding a brand, but through years, there are people that have ripped off people by taking pics. A very common one, is, Pakistan or places like around there, they'll actually just take a picture and put it on Etsy. This just happened to me the other day. They took my picture from one of my sites, put it on there as a selling this whip on Etsy now for $299 worldwide, but I even tried to complain to Etsy, and I went through this whole thing, and they gave me all stuff to go through. Basically, they told me that I can't share my email with anyone. And they also basically told me to go through these steps. I'm like, there's no steps in here that actually gives me any way to make you have an open case to go against this guy and take care of it. Right. And so basically, they just kept giving me this runaround. There ain't nothing to do about it. I'm like, that's shocking. So, buyer beware. Definitely make sure you can talk to a whip maker. If you get a deal that good and it looks really good, it's like this guy makes a whip looks that good for that little. Like, call them and make. If you can't talk to someone, I'd even stay away from, conversations on text. Those don't sound right. I'd watch out. But, you might want to watch on that. But that happens where people are directly ripping you off or ripping someone off. That's a common thing with the internet. You can't stop because you can't just, call the Better Business Bureau and say, there they are. They're, Indianapolis on downtown ripping us off. So,
right.
And then there's other spectrum where there's been, so usually it's adolescents, teens, near tween teen, they're trying to get into it and they found a good thing to do. And it's not always it, but sometimes people have taken pictures from other whip makers and said, I can make this type of whip for you. And I don't think they've always, now, some people I'm sure have done that shadily, but I think there's some cases where I think they honestly weren't trying to be shady. They were just ignorant to how things go. Like, I think they only made a few whips, and once again, if you've only made 5 or 10 whips, or you don't have a whip in a color to show someone that a black and red, well, you shouldn't. I mean, you can say I can make you a black and red one, but I don't have pics of it. But I think what they did is say, well, they took a picture of someone that made a black and red whip out of nylon or whatever, and then was just like, I can make your whip like this. And in a sense, I think he was just trying to convey, I can make you a black and red one like this because it's black and red. Maybe a handle braid, I don't know, but I think he was just trying to say that. But in the process, he can't make a whip like that because that was like probably, you know, a Rhett Kelly or something. It was someone that, it was a well-known pick. You can see the picks, and everyone knows that's his because the way the picks are, the type of whip and how the whip looks, you can tell. But I think he just meant to do it like that. But at the end of the day, you can't do that because you can't make his handle that good. You can't make his transition out that good. You know, so it is a fraudulent line. I don't think he meant to do it. But like, there's sometimes things like that. And then I would go say, if we're talking to you new whip makers or aspiring whip makers, if you don't have more than 10 whips and they're all the same collar, you might want to start working on all these hobby things to try to make at least different collars, or start figuring out things you want to make, because you can't really take pictures of stuff you haven't made.
Right.
You know, you shouldn't. It's highly not frowned upon. So you know, that's something you could think about. If you're like, I only have 2 whips to show, well, first of all, should you be getting a brand and a logo, whip videos, and pushing it to where you're putting money behind it, or trying to make this business? If you only made, less than 10, nothing wrong. I mean, if you feel it, it's great. You've been apprenticing with someone, that can be a big advantage. But you know, you may feel that in you, and that may happen. But you know, let some of it naturally happen. Don't rush at everything. And you know, we talk about other videos about making a logo and brand. Like, don't rush it. Give it some time. You know, do it right the first time, so it'll stick with you. So you know, but
all your work represents you as a craftsman. So if you're you don't want to just use other people's photos. I wouldn't. You know, I think I might have only ever done that one time with a customer, and it was because they were asking me about a particular whip that they had seen on someone's website.
You're not publicly saying it. You're trying to say, like, oh, is this the type of whip you're talking about that you want me to design? Like, these collars or this handle braid, or because he's referring to a project. Yeah, but he didn't say like, hey, this is my whip. He let them know, is this what you're talking about? This isn't my whip, but here's so-and-so's whip. But it's, I think this, I haven't made this with these design or whatever, but is this what you're, you know. So, I mean, you can do that. Just be honest. You know, just be like, don't send him a pic. Be like, is this the whip you're talking about? Without saying, well, this isn't my whip. Because even in a private chat, it'd come off making you think like you made that whip. So. Right. And they might be disappointed because maybe the whip's way better than yours. So they get your version like, dude, you just showed me this picture of this freaking whip and it looked amazing. Like, there's sinew sticking out of it. And the foundation under this is showing. And it's chunkier. This is like, it's like, you know, they're like, I saw that whip. I was ready to drop $500 on it. You know, you just don't know. So, you know, but be honest, you know, that's always good. Don't try to hide stuff. Not that I think any of you guys do, but you know, if there is a gap, let them know there's a gap. It's not a big deal. Not a deal breaker for everybody. If there's a misbraid in the handle, or a misbraid where, you know, you just actually went over one, under one instead of an over 3, you know, people usually don't care. Don't let that be the end of the world.
Right.
You know, you might have to remake it for someone, but you got a good in stock. Don't start, you know, getting mad and ticked off. And some people don't even care. I've been surprised by some people. They're like, it's a good whip. It don't matter. He's like, all I care is that it is everything it wanted to be. It's a handcrafted item. People make mistakes. Things happen.
Right.
I mean, you buy a brand new knife and it's handmade. It doesn't look like a factory when it brings the brass to the wood, or the, you know, there's some marks. There's just, you know, you can clean up as much as that human is capable of, like doing drywall, but they're handmade. So there's, you know, there'll be 1,000 things done with that, and a couple of them will be noticed that there's a part you can see it's handmade. It's a natural product. So usually not a big deal. You know.
Yeah, you know, if nothing else, you got a photo of another whip that you made that you could add to your website, increase your overall collection, so to speak, or your gallery volume. And you know, you got a strand drop that didn't go the way you wanted. You make the pictures show that, let the customer know, and this is why it's discounted X amount of dollars. And you learn your lesson. You try to do better on the next whip, but trying to, and I'm not saying people do. I'm sure some people have, but you try to hide something bad about a whip and not make the customer aware of it is only asking for trouble, because it could potentially, you know, well, they say in business, 90% of your business is repeat customers. So, and I have had a lot. You think in whips, you think a lot of people would buy a whip and be done, but I've got several customers that have gotten, you know, more than one whip. So you don't want to make them think they're getting one thing and then send them something else, or send them a whip that had a real bad problem that you hid in a photo. because if they get back in touch with you, you can try to make it right, or they may never get back with you, and they may never buy a whip from you.
Yeah, they may just have a
again.
story they share with everyone. And like even if I had a 10-foot Raiders, but something happened and I had to immediately send it to Straight Cops, and I just made them another one overnight to send it to them in its place. It's like I'd have to let them know, well, this isn't the same 10-foot Raiders. Here's another picture of it, or I wouldn't have shipped it off first place. This is. I got to deal with that. Or I talked to them first, like, hey, this came up. Can I remake you another one? This is, but even though it's a 10-foot whip, it's if it ain't the same one, you want to send pictures of the two you got laying out, send one on one, but not the other one that he's getting.
Mm-hmm.
And to square some of these things off, like I think I said earlier that let your whip pictures speak for themselves. I don't know if I said that, but on this one or another one. But when you take pics, you should, when you're advertising, like on Facebook, not so much a website, or even website too, let the whip pictures speak for themselves. Let your work speak for itself. Don't worry about trying to hype it up too much. Don't worry about hyping up too much. Whenever there's some good advice I heard, when from starting off, and it was like, just send a picture of work, tell what it is, it's this length, it's this plat, handle length, whatever, give specifics, but end it there. You might want to say something like, this is the best tapered whip I've ever made, or this is perfect, and the most perfect, this whip is, they got the perfect taper, which is laughable because there's no such thing really. I mean, as a perfect taper, there's a lot of pleasing tapers that work for a model, but everyone likes things a little differently. More weight, less weight, thinner here, thicker tip, whatever. There's no such thing as a perfect whip. So, you come off a little odd, or you look rookie-ish, or kind of what you said. And then if it's like, let's say it is perfect taper, it's like, yeah, let's say it's not. You're still 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 whips deep. May not be a really good, perfect-looking taper all the way braid. So, you see that, and then you look at work, it's like, we're going to call that perfect. So just stay away from that stuff. One advice, I give too is stay away from labeling your construction. Don't worry about saying, I make this whip, it's this, and just say, I use this belly, or 3 belly, or 2 belly, or 1 bolster. I add like this, or even if you're doing nylon, you say I use duct tape for bolster, or black bolster, or black tape for bolster. Well, it's like if you write that, well, you have to always do that. If somebody gets that whip and opens it up, hoping for black tape, which they don't really care, but they see something else, and they're just like, oh, well, that was lied to. Your products may change. You may change construction methods. You don't really need to add your construction method since it doesn't mean anything to the customer most times in the first place. They want to know that it works well and looks like they want. And they don't, it's like they don't need to know what the cook does to make that meat taste good. They just want that steak.
Right.
So when you advertise, this is always a good tip also. If you do want to advertise and you are trying to spice up your advertising, this is old advertising adage. It's like you're making it, don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle. So you're not trying to sell the steak. Now, you got to make a good steak if this customer gets in with the sizzle and they want to come back for another steak. So you got to make good steak, but you want to sell the sizzle. The smell going on, the sound of it crackling, the hype. And I think too many people, by trying to say what inside of their whip is or how they make it, they think is selling a sizzle, but you're not. You're actually just talking about the meat still. You're not selling that thing's going to melt in your mouth. This flavor is going to take you back to a kid. Anything that sells it. So it's good to know the difference between the steak and the sizzle. So, I would always say sell the dream. I don't want to sell an indie whip. I'll say this is what an indie whip is. Here's where it comes from. And if you've watched, things about the whip, or what makes the whip good, or what you'd like, why you would want this whip, or what makes it this whip. I won't worry about, well, it ends in a 6-plat drop, and the fall hitch should be like this. None of that matters. Sell the dream that when you get this whip, you're going to feel like you're 7 years old and you're watching Raiders for the first time. Sell the dream. Don't sell the steak. Sell the sizzle of the steak and what that steak does for you. Don't. You want to sell the benefits of the whip, not the specifics of the whip. Sell the benefits.
Right. Yeah, let them know the adventure they can have with this whip. And
basic advertising.
Yeah, they tend to like that. I know. That's what I was interested in. I was always in love with Indy and his whips. Had to have a whip, but it was always the fact that I just kind of felt a little bit like Indiana Jones when I had that whip in my hand.
You can't shoot anyone, but you can crack a whip at him.
Yeah,
you can't just shoot the sword at him. You can crack a whip at him and still feel like anything else.
Right. But not coming off of being overly proud of your work, or this is the I don't know, the best way to come across. I just try to, like Blake says, just make a post, tell what it is. It's a 6 foot, 12 flat, 2-tone, whatever.
Just show good pics that will actually enable someone to show off your good work if it's so good, you know.
I don't like trying to convince someone that I think this whip flows like water, or I think this cracks like a shotgun.
Well, they all crack like shotguns, so if they don't crack like a shotgun, now we got a problem.
Something's wrong.
You know.
But
But be honest with your picks, you know, and that's two-way street too. If you can learn to take these good pictures of your whips and really start able to look at your whips better as you get better, you might start seeing something in a pic and be like, wow, I don't remember that when I braided it. It looks like crap. You go to your whip and be like, oh my gosh, there's something I didn't even notice. That pic showed it to me. Or might be vice versa. It looks like crap in a pic. So you run over to your whip to see like, why is that pic looking like it? My whip's good. But, you know, it also keep you honest. Because if you look at a pic of your whip and you're like, I don't like the way that heel looks. I don't like the shape of this. Man, this doesn't look clean. That's good. Mm-hmm. It's like looking in a mirror doing any, you know, martial arts or dancing or anything, cracking whips in the mirror. You get a mirror to see, you know, so good pics help it out all around.
they can make you or break you.
So hope this is helpful, and we'll get some more at you. And I don't know if I said this before, but we have no idea if anyone but maybe 2 people are watching these. So if you saw it, drop an emoji or something. Just drop a comment. And, you know, even if you want to drop a comment and say, thank you, Blake and Steve. Please stop making these series. I'll never watch one. No one's watching these. That's fine.
Or if there's something yet you want us to talk about that we're not talking about, that might be good too.
Close us off.
All right. Blake Burning, Steve Townsend signing off. Out. We'll see you next time.